What's good? I'm Matt Jumper, and I'm going to walk you through how to make this landing page in Framer. And this is going to be a quick exercise in mostly layout, but I'm also going to get into using video for the background, customizing a contact form, using the ticker component, and I couldn't help myself from bringing in one animation into the mix for the image. You can find the assets I'm using in the description below, along with a remix link you can use to duplicate the file, to follow along if you get stuck, or just play with the end result. Cool? Let's get into it. Okay, so I have the design done in Figma, and before I start to build this out in Framer, I just want to walk you through how I envision this layout to behave and kind of the key elements to think about. So first off, I want to make this video relatively quick, so I'm not going to get into the responsive states, as in like I have a specific breakpoint for tablet and for phone. However, I do want to think about the responsiveness of this whole section, both how it goes in and out on just the desktop state, but also vertically responsive, because this is a landing page that is just going to take up 100% of the user's viewport, so 100 VH, 100% of the screen. Because of this, we actually have to think about vertical responsiveness as well. So in Figma, I actually built this using like auto layout. So this is actually going to behave relatively similar to how we're going to build it in Framer. So if I take this canvas here and actually shrink it down, you'll see that the video background is actually the one thing that's changing in size, but everything else is staying the same. So that's how I want it to behave, is that we basically prioritizing the actual elements on the page. So the navigation, the text, the email input, and the ticker on the bottom. And the other thing is, as far as the vertical responsiveness goes, is I actually want this email opt-in to be the same height as whatever this text ends up being. So if I were to just drag in this text to increase the height, you'll notice that the email opt-in gets bigger and also the video here gets smaller. So that's like the responsiveness of it. That's how I want it to behave. And then just to go over a few of the other different elements here, we have a video background behind the navigation. The navigation is just a logo and a remix link. And then we have our email opt-in, which will connect to form. And then we have our ticker here. So this text is going to be just like infinitely scrolling left to right. And then, of course, the image here in the middle. She's basically sitting on top of all the content, except we'll make sure that the text and the email opt-in is on top of her. But other than that, the only thing is, I'm sure you saw in the video, there's going to be a subtle animation here. So we have two assets, basically a silhouette image and a full opacity image. So we're just going to basically place them on top of each other and play with a appear animation just to have the top image fade in. Cool. Okay, so now we can get into Framer and just start with a blank canvas. Okay, so we have a new Framer project here, and there's typically a few things that I do when I first set up a file just to kind of set myself up for success, make it easier for myself as I'm scaling the site. I'm going to cover that in a different video. For now, I just want to make sure that we're building this as fast as possible. So let's start with the desktop frame. This is essentially the page that we're building in. And you'll notice that the height is set to 1,000 pixels and it's fixed, which means it's always gonna be 1,000 pixels, regardless of how much content's inside, regardless of how tall the user's browser is. It's gonna be 1,000 pixels, which we don't want. We want it to adapt to the content inside of it. So the first step to do this is just add a layout to this desktop frame. So now it's actually a stack. And then next is I wanna basically change the height to fit content, which you can see that I can't do that yet because there's actually nothing inside, so it can't fit anything. So I can just drop in a stack or tap S. And if I draw it in, it actually comes with like frames inside, which I don't really need. I just wanted the stack itself. So this stack here, I'll leave it as it is right now, but for the desktop stack, now I can set the fit content. And it's just adapting to the height of this stack inside here. Okay. So the stack now, we can use this as the container for the main area. So we can just call this hero. And this is also helpful because if you decide to add content below this hero section, you don't have to like redo all this. You could just literally put it below, because this hero is going to be 100 VH, 100% of the user's viewport. So that's the first thing we can do. We can set the height instead of a fixed 674. We'll set it to 100 VH. And you'll notice that there's a viewport draggable element here. And this is basically just to preview while you're editing what that viewport looks like. And if you preview, actually, I'll add a fill to this here so you can see it. When I preview it, if I drag this out, you see that it's always just filling the height. So I'll remove that fill, and a couple other things we can do. We can set the width to fill, so now it's taking up the full width and the full height. And the gap is just the spacing between any elements inside, which I'm just going to set to 0 for now. And now we have our container. So we can drop in our image now. We'll go to the folder of assets, and we can get hero.png and just drag it in. And I'll put it inside the hero stack here. So you'll notice that it went perfectly in the middle here. That's because the hero stack is basically dictating the layout. So we have a alignment, top, middle, bottom, and distribute. I can change that as well. This image though, because I want to do two things. I want to make it take up the full height as well. And I want to put an image behind it. And I also want to make sure that it is on top of all of the content. So because of this, I don't want the type to be relative. I actually want it to be absolute. And now what I've done is I've made it so it's not in the flow of content. So I can click and drag it anywhere I want. I can set the viewport to 100 VH. And now you'll notice that it's not like perfectly centered. I have to manually do this by aligning it this way. And in Figma, I actually have it placed a bit where it's aligned to the bottom, but the top isn't exactly 100%. I have it a bit larger. So I can just click and drag this and visually kind of place it in the same way. So it ends up being, I guess, we can do 108. And then now if I were to duplicate this, so I can right click and hit duplicate, I can click and drag this and move it around. But if I undo it, it's basically just sitting on top of that original image. So let's just go to the Finder here and grab that other image. We can copy it, and then we'll click on this fill here for the image. I'll click on it and then just hit Command V. So now it's replacing it. So now I have this image sitting directly on top of the one before. If I drag this order here, it'll change what's visible first. If you get to the point where at any stage where the order isn't really reflecting what you see on the screen, you can also set a Z index to be higher. So this is 1, and this is also 1. So if I make this 2, then that way it's always going to be above. And let's just do a quick rename of the top one to silhouette, and then the bottom one to, we can just call it full. And I noticed that there's actually a black outline here. So I think that the alignment's just a bit off. So if we just select both of them again and align them center, I think that should fix it. Make sure that these numbers are the same. Yeah. So it's not perfectly centered in the screen right now, but once the content's in here, we're actually going to move it a bit like left or right to make sure it's visually balanced. So right now we just want to make sure that they're both aligned with each other. Okay, and then now to do the just a subtle animation of the top image just kind of fading in, we can add an effect. So we'll go to effects and do up here, and we'll just do fade in. That's what we want, and enter. So basically this is the before effect and the before state, and then the after state is what we have in the canvas. So before, the opacity is 0, that's good. We don't need to change anything else here. The transition, we can just play with these numbers a bit. So I kind of figured out 120, 36, and 4, and 0.5 works. So the stiffness and the damping and the mass, basically if you play with these numbers, you'll see that this is visually just representing what this animation is going to look like. So you can play with those numbers as much as you want and get it however you please. But this to me is just a nice kind of easing in effect. And the delay here is basically, instead of just doing it right on load, we're going to wait half a second before we start this animation. Okay, so next, let's just look at how we're going to set up the layout of the content inside. So I actually set up some guides in Figma. And this is just to basically set the outside, the margins or the padding. So it's the same thing of the values I have here. So the left and the right padding is 64 pixels. The bottom padding is actually 32. And the gap, so the spacing between each element, is 64 pixels. So we can replicate this in Framer, but the one thing to consider is that this ticker here is actually not adhering to the 64 pixels of padding that's going full width. So let's keep that in mind as we set this up in Framer. So the first thing is, let's add a new stack to apply that padding, because if we put the padding on the hero stack, then the ticker inside of it is also going to take in that padding. And we don't want that. So let's tap S and make a stack and remove the frames here. And we can call this outside padding, just so we know the purpose of it. And we can set the width and the height to fill. And the gap we said it was 64. The padding, we don't want any on the top, because this video is just going to the top of the browser. So we can actually isolate the top, right, bottom, left. So top is 0, right is 64, bottom is going to be 32 that we said, and then left is 64. I know you can't see this visually happening because there's nothing inside, but that spacing has been applied. Okay, so now we can drop in, we can start with the video up top. So let's go to the insert menu and we can go to media and drop in a video, just drag and drop. And it's inside this outside padding stack here. I could set this to fill and fill, so it takes up all the available space. But we actually want to set this up a bit differently, because we have our navigation that actually wants to sit on top of that video. So if I just make a stack here, this will be kind of a placeholder for the navigation right now. You'll notice that it's breaking the layout. So first off, this is going left and right, the direction for the outside padding. I can move this up and down, but the video is still not sitting behind the stack here, which will be the navigation. So we want to do the same thing that we did for the image and make this absolute and just set it to 100%, both width and height. When we do this, you'll notice that we change it to relative and change to 100%. Now it's actually taking up the whole screen, and it's ignoring all of the padding inside of this outside padding stack. So what we can do to fix this is we'll take the video, we'll take the stack, that'll be the navigation. We'll make a new stack out of these. So now they're inside another stack. And this stack here that it's just put inside, we'll make this fill and fill inside this outside padding. So now it's actually adhering to the padding that we sent. And then now this video is 100% of this stack. So now this stack here, and I guess I'll just rename these so it's kind of clear, so I'm not just calling everything stack. This would be navigation, and this outside one could be like navs-video, just so we know the contents inside. And you'll notice that the navigation here is still not visible. So if we add a z-index here, styles plus z-index, and change this to say 2, now it is showing up. And this is the same as this image, but this is lower in the canvas. So if I actually just make this one 3, it's probably safer. Okay, so you'll notice here when I preview it, I didn't apply the z-index to both the images. So this is 1. We'll add this one to make this 2, and then we'll make the video, we can make it 0, and the navigation, maybe make it 1. And then now it's just the order that we want. Okay. So for this video, we can just finish this off and actually upload the file. So we can hit upload, choose file, and under video, we have that MP4. And then navigation, we can delete these 2 frames inside, and we can set this now, the width to fill, and the height here, we have it hugging, so fit. We don't have any stuff inside yet, so we can't do that yet. I can just tap T and type hover, I guess is the name. And it's right now it's centered, so it's behind the woman. And then I'll just make a, I'll just duplicate this, Command D, just so we have a couple of elements in here, so I can actually set the spacing here to distribute. Right now it's center, so if I did start, they'd both be aligned at the start. Same thing with end. Space between basically is anchoring both these elements to the corners. So now you can see both of them are where they need to be. So the text here, I can just rename this to remix. And the navigation stack here, we can set the height now to fit. And then the nav video stack here, we can set the gap. We can just remove it right now. And distribute, we can move it to end. So now it's going to be at the bottom. And we can add our own padding here. So let's look at Figma. And this is, there's no padding here, but in the top stack or auto layout, we have 16. So we can just apply that all the way around. And as far as the layout goes now, this is working. We can just do a bit more styling now on the text and I guess adding in the symbol as well. So the text here is enter medium 24 minus 4%. So enter already. Medium, we can make it white. And 24 pixels. The line we said was minus 4% in Figma, so we can translate this to EM. It's going to be minus 0.04. And the line height, we can just make it 100%. The text here is fragment mono, regular, 12, 8%. Let's make it white. And then fragment mono, 12 pixels. And we said it was 8%, so 0.08. And it was also all uppercase. So if you make a text style, so you can reuse the different text elements, you could actually make it uppercase and enforce it. But since it's not text style, I will just retype this in all caps. And we want to make this a button as well. So we can right click here and hit add stack. And I'll just remove the gap. We don't need it. And the height, we said it was 32 pixels of the button. And the outside padding is 24 pixels. So we can set that left and right. And then let's just make this a component. So we'll rename this button and we'll create a component. And when we do this, now we can actually add a hover state that we have control over. So we can hit plus hover, and we have this kind of set up, but let's just do the background first. So we have a couple things. We have a fill at 32% of this gray color, and then we have a background blur at 8%. So we can do this in Framer. We can do the same thing. We'll add a fill. We said it was A3, A3, A3 at 32. And then we have a background blur. So we just go to Style and Filter, BG Blur, and we can set it to 8 and see how that goes. And then we can also add a radius here to make it a pill shape. So we can round up the corners by going to radius and really any value above the height of this. So if it's 32, if you made this 32, it'll be a pill shape, or any number above that. So that's good. And then we don't have a hover state documented in Figma, but we can just add we can click on the hover state, and we can either like darken this or increase the opacity, maybe both, and just see what that gives us. So let's preview this. Okay, and then we have a symbol beside our logo here. So in that folder, we can drag in symbol.png. And we can just drag it in the layers panel to be beside the hover here. And we want to put these two in a stack, because right now this navigation is set to space between. So it is centering that other element. So if I just like keep duplicating this, you'll see it's just filling this space between. I just wanted to undo that. So let's take the symbol and the hover and put it in a stack. So the shortcut there is Option Command Return. And we can set the width and the height to fit. And then the gap here, we can set to, I don't know if it was 4 pixels, 8 pixels. And sorry, the height of this as well, it's gonna be 24. And then the gap here, we can set to 8, and we'll call this logo. Okay. It's starting to come together. I think the only other thing on this top section with the video and the navigation is we have some rounded corners here in Figma. So it's 8 pixels on the corner. So on this nav video stack, we can take the radius and bottom right, bottom left, we can set it to 8. And when you preview it, you'll notice sometimes, this is a bit finicky in Framer, sometimes the video component doesn't adhere to the corner radius in the stack that it's in, even though the overflow is set to hidden, which is basically should be cropping it. In the preview, or in the canvas, it's working fine. So let's just add that to the video as well. So now this looks better. So next we have our title here. So I can just click on this and copy it. And inside this outside padding stack here, I can just tap T, click and paste it, Command V. And I'm going to drag it below nav video. And you'll notice that it's in the center here. If I set the width to fill, and the color here is white, we'll set this to black. And now we can see it. So let's just style it. Enter regular 44 minus 4. Enter regular 44 minus 4. Line is 100%. Yeah. Okay. So we have this, and then we also have our email opt-in here. So just to get this layout generally the way that we want it to, I'm going to make another stack. So I'm going to tap S, just draw it here, and then I'm going to now take this experience title and that stack I just created, which is like the email opt-in placeholder, and we'll make this into a stack. So now we'll set the direction to left and right, and that's the new stack we made. And the width to fill and the height to fit. And I'll put the title above this so it comes first. And then now you'll see the way it's behaving is this text is filling all the space, and these frames are actually just, we can delete them. But the stack itself has a fixed size. So we'll make this fill as well. And we'll add a background here. Copy the value from Figma. Okay, and then the height. So we have a fixed height here. So you might want to like instinctively like make it a fixed height or make it fit the content inside and set some padding. But what I want to do, as I showed you in Figma, is the height of this box, I want it to be matching the height of the content or the title. So we can just take the stack and have the height be fill. So layout-wise, this is good, except obviously we don't want this space here in the middle to be taken up by any of those elements. So how did we build this in Figma? I have fixed sizes here. So this is 309, call it 310. And this is 380. So what we can do, because the Figma is like very static based, I'm not building a responsive layout. I'm going to change this up a bit in Framer, and the width is fill, which is good. But then basically what we can do is we can have a max width, not even be fixed size. Like this would be max width of say 300 pixels. We can do a value of relative spacing. So the max width here, if we say like 30%, this actually is probably closer to what we want, considering that this image is going to scale with size as well. And then we can do the same thing to the stack here. So I'm going to call this email opt-in, and this will call it content. Sorry, so on this stack here, we can do the same thing where we add a max width, and it's relative, and we'll make it 30%. And right now, this content stack is distribute center, so it's just aligning it to the middle. We can go space between again. And now it's getting closer to what we want. And then one other thing you might have noticed is that in Framer, our desktop breakpoint here is 1200. And in Figma, we're actually designing at 1440. Since we don't have breakpoints set up in Framer, just the desktop one, we can change this to whatever we want without any implications. because it's just the one size. If we had tablet and phone breakpoints here, this actually would change when it breaks to the smaller points. But for now, this is just helping us visually kind of get it closer while we're designing to the Figma file. So now that it's bigger here, this kind of problem stands out a bit more to me, where this the image might technically be centered, and it might not even be centered, but I want to move it over to the left to visually center it. So I'm just going to change this number to say like 358 just to shift it over, and now visually it's more centered. And then I'm going to uncheck the left anchor here so it still anchors from the center. And then that looks good. I think next we can just go into the email opt-in, and we can copy and paste the title. And we can always revisit any of the sizing maybe at the end when we have all the content in here. So we can set the width to fill, and the text here is intermedium 14. So I think all of the text here actually is already set, but if you need to set it 14, 120%, -2. Yep. And then we can select the stack here and set the padding to 16. Okay, so next we can do the email form. So we can go to the insert menu and go to forms, go to input, and drop this into that stack. And the email opt-in stack here is left to right, so we'll just make this up and down. And we can move this text above the input. The input, we can grab it and set the width to fill. And now you'll see for the input component, there's a bunch of different options here. So the service is basically just the service you want to use to actually store these emails. And you can just drop in the form ID as well as a user group title if you have it. And then success and the redirect are basically what happens after you submit. The layout here, left and right or up and down, I want to keep it to left and right. And the font, we can make this fragment mono. The weight, regular size, we can make this 12. And letter we'll do -2. The input, we can change the placeholder text to your email. And the color, we can leave this at black at 100%. And the fill, we can remove it. So we'll just set the opacity to 0. The padding, I believe we can make that 8. The radius 4. For the focus state, while the field is in focus, we can actually just use the eyedropper and choose this pink color instead of just using like black. Just a nice way to tie it in. And then the border is, we can set it to 1 pixel in CCC. And then for the button, we can change this to get notified, if I could spell it. Okay. The font, we'll go back to fragment mono, size 12, -2%. And the fill, we'll just remove it. The text, we'll make it black. Or sorry, for the fill, this should actually be a value, my bad. Okay. And then the text is black, that's fine. Docked yes, so we want it inside. And then the width of the button, I think 104 is fine. The inset here, we can do 8 pixels. Padding, we can do 8 as well. You'll notice it's a bit cut off here. It's a bit cropped. So let's just maybe go back to this input here, and the height is set to auto. So the padding, I think if we increase this to 12, that helps with the button. That looks better. Okay. So now on this stack here as well, it's set to distribute center and gap is 10. So there's only a 10 pixel gap here. We actually want it to be spaced between. So it's pushing the title to the top and the form to the bottom. And visually, it's a bit off color-wise. It's not this background. It's actually the background of this canvas. So let's just grab this hex code and paste it on this desktop stack here. So that feels better. Okay, so let's do the ticker now. So in Figma, we have all this text and circles that are just kind of scrolling across. I'm going to start just by copying this text and pasting it in Framer here. So I'm going to tap T and just Command V here. And I'm just doing it outside of the canvas, and I'll show you why in a second. Copy this as well. And then the last element is that circle, which is 4 pixels in white. So to make a circle, super easy, just tap F and draw it out. And then we'll make the height and width 4 by 4. And then the radius we'll just set to 4, so that's a circle. I'll rename this to circle, and I'm going to drop in the ticker and I'll show you kind of a couple nuances you got to consider. So if we insert and go to ticker, we can drag this into the page here, and I want it outside of the outside padding because we want it to go full width. So we'll put it underneath, and the hero here is still set to left and right, so we'll just make it go up and down. And the ticker, we'll set the width to fill, so it's takes up the whole space, and the height we can set it to 24 for now. And then padding wise too, I think we might have applied the padding to the outside padding here, so we can actually remove it from here and apply it to the hero. So now it's showing up underneath the ticker here, but right now just ignore it. It actually ends where this hard purple line is. But basically this component here, if you haven't used it before, it's a bit different than what you might be used to. Basically to populate the items inside of this ticker, you'll see here it says children 0 items, and I can hit add and choose. And it's actually allowing me to choose the items outside of the page here. So it's not showing me any of the images that I have, any of the text that I have, any of the stacks that I have inside the page. It's all outside the canvas. So I'll choose circle, so that'll be inside here, but you'll notice that the text didn't show up here. And the other way to actually connect the item is to click those 3 dots and click and drag it. But again, it's not connecting on that text. To connect text, you need to make it in a frame or a stack. So let's just grab both of these and hit add stack. And we'll take both and make sure the height and the width is set to fit. And we'll remove the fill. And then we'll just maybe just name this 1 and 2, just so we know it's clear that it's 2 different ones. I think I accidentally changed the opacity down to 0.2 by clicking 2 without renaming it. Okay, so now we have those elements, and on the ticker now, I can click and drag this, and it connects, and do the same thing for 1. I can also move these like right here so it's easier after I did the hard part. So now there's 2 items. It didn't connect the first one. Okay, so now I can drag this so it's 1 circle 2, which is this text here, and then I'll add the circle again. So now it's repeating. In the preview, it's only showing you 1 instance of each one, but when I actually hit the preview button, you'll see it's infinitely scrolling. So content-wise, that's good. The styling I want to change though. So the gap, we can change this to 16, and the padding, we can just remove it. And the speed, we can make this 16% because I was going way too fast. I think that should probably do it. I don't think there's too much we actually need to tweak. Actually, yeah, there's a fade out. So under clipping, it says fade yes. We'll just set this to no, so it's just a hard edge. And then just spacing wise, we can add a gap in this hero stack to increase the space between these items. So we can just add a gap of 64 and preview this. So it looks good. And responsibly vertically, that is exactly how we wanted it to behave. At this point, the vertical responsiveness is what I want to focus on. The horizontal responsiveness, as I said before, we're not going to get into the breakpoints. I still want to optimize this as much as I can, especially now that we have all the elements in here. We can actually look at maybe some fine tuning just for the desktop state. So if I drag this in, a couple things I see here. One is I want to actually make sure that this email opt-in and the text stays above the image at all times. And 2, I think we can just optimize the width of this email opt-in. I don't think it needs to be so wide and get cut off so early. So we can select this email opt-in here and set the max width just to like 22% and just have a bit more of a safe area. And then the content stack, because we want both the title and the email opt-in to be on top of the image, we can just add a Z-index here and make it say 5. And again, that Z index, the higher the number, the higher it's going to show in the order of things if things are stacked on top of each other. Because think of the Z index as like x-axis, y-axis, and Z is the depth. So now, if I were to drag this out, this looks good on the bigger screens. If I drag it in, this is still visible, doesn't get broken. Obviously, this text, if I were to bring this in and work on the different breakpoints, one, I would be changing the layout, but two, I'd probably maybe add background to this text, change the direction of this form to go up and down so the email doesn't get cut off, stuff like that. As far as the fine tuning goes, I think that the responsiveness looked good, but on this screen, when it was really wide, I didn't like how this was touching like this. So we can tweak this by just adding a min height here. So we have a max width, we can add a minimum height, and whatever this is, basically, because at 2 lines it didn't like the size of it. So at 3 lines, if I just change this height to fixed, I can see what it's at right now. It's at 132. Let's just say it doesn't go any smaller than this. So we'll just make this 132 as the min height. So now if I drag this out and that text on the left becomes 2 lines, this doesn't get any shorter. Okay. I think that's it. Last thing, like I'm going to connect this button to the Remix link. If you wanted to connect this to your own link, you can go in this component and hit the link to, and you can make it a link in here, or you can make it a variable, shoot it up, and set it here. And add your URL, whatever page. And one last quick thing is we have a video background here, and we just got to consider that it might take a second to load, or it might even fail to load. In that case, let's just see what this looks like. The visibility, we can just turn it off, and you can see that it's a white background here. So we're losing the logo, and the Remix button's a bit harder to see. So we can just add just like a mid-gray background here. We'll just make this C6. So now if the video doesn't load, at least we can see the logo. So yeah, we can turn the video back on. And now we're done. All right, we're done. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you learned a lot. If you want to see more stuff, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe and do all that good stuff. Hope to see you soon.